Hi everybody, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be taking a look at multi-pilot training certificates and the pros and cons of whether it is a good idea to get one of these for your accounts. So for those of you who are not aware, you have the option of buying these certificates for your account to be able to train the additional characters that you have on an account. So in order to be able to use one of these, you have to have an account that is currently plexed or paid for. So you have to have an Omega account, and then you can buy 2 extra multiple pilot training certificates that therefore allow you to train the other 2 slots on your account at the same time as your general character. So there's a few cons, there's a few pros, and basically we're going to look at them all in this video to try and determine whether it's a good idea for you to have one of these on your account. So the obvious advantage is that in order to get one of these through PLEX, it will only cost you 485 PLEX instead of the 500 that it would do for an Omega game time. However, do bear in mind obviously you do need the Omega, but you can therefore train the 2 additional characters at 485 PLEX each. And that 15 PLEX will save you approximately 40 million ISK a month at the current price of 2.7 million ISK per PLEX. So although the general saving is relatively small, times that by 2 characters and you are saving 80 million ISK and still have the benefits of being able to train at Omega speed. And so one of the obvious advantages there is that if you are farming for PLEX or farming skill points in order to extract, then obviously it's handy saving 80 million ISK per month on PLEX prices. So there's a few reasons why you may want to do this other than just skill extracting, and that's because you can train additional characters to Sino alts, industrial capabilities, research alts, anything that you want. You can make another mission runner, you could do a abyssal runner, etc. So there's numerous reasons why you might want an additional character, and the big bonus with having it on a current account that has another character on it is that if that account is plexed or paid for in cash, then the whole account gets access to Omega skills and benefits. And although if the training certificate has run out, you obviously won't be able to train additionally, but once you get to whatever skill points you decide that is enough for that character, as long as I say that account is plexed, the secondary character will also get the Omega advantages, so you will still be able to fly whatever it is that you've trained into. So me, for instance, I have several accounts with 3 characters on that do my industry, and again, if PLEX prices become too high or that I don't want to skill extract from all 3 accounts, etc., I can just PLEX the one account, and again it gives me 3 characters that are Omega status and can do research and industry for me, while only paying for the one account. Now, the multiple player pilot training certificates very much track the price of PLEX for obvious reasons, that in order to get them you have to pay in PLEX. Now, CCP does do the odd introductory offer every now and then that you can get an Omega account and they will give you a multiplayer pilot training certificate as an additional at half the price, etc. That happened, I think it was last month, but all in all you're going to be tracking. So we've got the PLEX price at 2.7 million times 485 gives us 1.309 billion ISK, and minus off the tax that you get from obviously selling it on the market, and that's pretty much the price that you're going to come out at. So again, as PLEX prices ebb and flow, you'll find that obviously they track same as pretty much the extractors and the skill injectors. So for advantages, I think that pretty much covers what you'll get for advantages, and there are quite a few of disadvantages that I would place on this. So the obvious disadvantages comes from basically having to train the characters up to start off with. Now obviously if you have your main character, we'll assume that whatever, it's Omega status. In order to train up an additional character to, for instance, 5 million skill points that you can do on a new account, you can't do that on a current Omega account. So if you already have a character on there that is training, you can't train an alpha on the same account. It would have to be a separate account, which means that you either have to stop training on your main account or let it lapse in regards to the Omega status to be able to train an alpha on the account, which takes roughly 3 to 5 months. And if you're doing that for 2 characters, that's nigh on a year's worth of training for the additional characters that obviously you won't be training your main character for. So the immediate thought is, well, pay for the pilot training licenses while keeping your account in Omega, but then obviously you are paying 485 PLEX per month to train a character that you could be training potentially on a brand new account for free. And although you get to obviously train faster, it's costing you, you're paying for the privilege of being able to train on that account. So just done the calculations there. So in order to get a brand new character, assuming that you start off with the million free skill points, it's going to take you 62 days at very maximum training in order to be able to hit the 5 million skill point mark. So to add that up quickly, we've got 1.4 billion ISK times 2, because it's 2 months, taking us to 2.8 billion ISK. And then obviously if we do that on 2 characters, that's 5.6 billion ISK, but it's going to cost us to get to the same amount that we could get with 2 alpha accounts. So I see that as obviously quite a big disadvantage, and again, there's no way really round it other than stopping training on your main character or the character that is the main on that account and leaving it for 10 months while you train the alpha accounts on that. So another thing to bear in mind, and I'll put a little caveat out there to say that I'm pretty sure this is the case, it's happened to me a few times, but I haven't got anything to demonstrate it right now. If you have plexed your main account, so for instance we plex an account today, and obviously it runs for 30 days. If we decide in 5 days time that we are going to do a multi-pilot training certificate on that account, when the plexed part runs out, your pilot training certificate will stop until the account is replexed. So although you still have 5 days remaining on your multi-pilot training certificate, it will stop as soon as your plexed account runs out of credit, which personally I think is a bit rank, to be perfectly honest, because you have paid either the cash or the plex in order to train it for 30 days, and it even says here that the training queue lasts, upon activation, training queue lasts for 30 days. It doesn't say anything that you have to have a valid Omega account active while these are training. So that's definitely something to think about. If you are obviously paying by credit card, debit card, etc., and paying monthly, then it's not really an issue. But if you are paying by Plex, then you either want to be making sure that you are obviously going to be plexing long term, and that obviously if you are doing it month by month, that you are doing the Plex and the multiple training accounts at the same time, so they run out at the same time. Another problem that arises from the multiple pilot training certificate is that although all 3 characters are in Omega status and are paid for via Plex or the MPT, you can only log 1 character on from that account at one time. So regardless of the fact that they are all technically plexed, you can only log 1 on from that account. Now, for instance, if you had this split over 1 account, i.e. if you'd gone through the alpha status on a new account entirely, obviously if you were then to plex it for an extra 40 million ISK, you would be able to log that character on and every other single character that you had on a separate account. And again, it's only going to cost you an extra 40 million ISK a month. So for an extra 40 million, you get access to a character. You can log obviously that character on, as well as multiple characters, without being locked out from having multiple characters on from the same account. As we stated right at the start, if this is a industrial account, for instance, it pretty much doesn't matter that you don't obviously need to be all logged in at once, and paying only 1 Plex to have 3 active characters obviously is a huge saving in the long run. So there are savings to be made by having them, assuming you're willing to put the time in, etc., in order to get the character to the right place, whereas obviously having them spread over multiple accounts, if I had 9 characters spread over 9 accounts, it would obviously cost me 9 Plex, 2 Plex each and every individual account, instead of only 3 accounts where I had 3 on each. So there is a slight way around this, and that is paying to have a character transferred onto an account. Now, you could potentially take an alpha that had reached 5 million skill points and pay CCP to transfer that character over to a current Plexed account or whatever other account that you wish. So if you had, I don't know, say your main account with just 1 character on, you could train 2 alpha characters on completely separate accounts and then pay for them 2 characters then to be brought over to your main account. Now that will cost you, in English money, that will cost you £20, I do believe. It used to be able to pay for it in Plex. They scrapped that unintentionally or intentionally, you decide, but as it currently stands, you can only do it with actual cash. But that will obviously, £20 in Plex would get you just 1,500 Plex, and obviously that would come in at 2.2 billion ISK. So it does work out slightly better value than paying to Plex your account in order to get the characters trained to the state that you want, but obviously not by a huge amount, but obviously it is training twice as fast. So obviously there are disadvantages and advantages to both, and again it's generally down for you to decide if that is a way that you want to go and which way it is. But again, I thought I would highlight some of the pitfalls that come with the multi-pilot training certificate, because people have said in the past in regards to skill extraction why I didn't cover it, and at the time on that video it wasn't necessary. It was meant to be more of a basic introductory guide to how to train an account for free or to play for an account for free, where these would just complicate matters. So the way that I did it, I was going to say I was fortunate, but I don't think that's quite right. I got my characters to an amount of skill points that I was happy with. I used to pay for 3 accounts, and when my characters got to a high enough amount of skill points that I didn't really need many more, there comes a point where training skills, once you get to a certain amount of skill points, becomes difficult to an extent. It's hard to know, other than just really specializing in the specialized skills that take a month for an extra 2% damage. So I decided that it wasn't really worth speccing my characters right the way out, and that basically I stopped training them and then started training the additional characters on the accounts. And again, this was very much focused on industry and a few other areas, but once they got to a certain amount in industry, then I decided again it wasn't really worth going ultra specialized on them characters, and therefore managed to train the tertiary characters on the account, and kind of went like that. And then once I'd got 9 characters, I think it was, I then set up another account, and so on and so on, and it kind of just snowballed from there. So I think it's 5 accounts that have 3 characters on each, and then after that I have individual accounts that hold the characters, so they basically come up from alpha accounts and therefore have been plexed, etc. Now obviously not everybody has the the luxury of having trained for 10 years or so. So again, these do give you a way of, I won't say catching up because that's not really how I like to phrase it, but it does give you a way of making it a little quicker for you in regards to time wise. So you don't have to spend years either training, or you don't have to sacrifice training your current main in order to be able to get additional characters. And yeah, generally I think they're a good idea, as well as the skill injectors, and although they come with their own problems and pitfalls, I think generally for the game they are required, necessary and useful. And just to show you that in some kind of perspective, this character that does a good majority of my trading is done skill extraction and does invention, science and production, only has 19 million skill points. Now obviously to some people 19 million skill points will be obviously an awful high amount, but that's just over a year's worth of training, never mind all the extra skill stuff that you get nowadays. So with maxed out training etc., you can get there in just over a year. And again, EVE is one of them games that rewards you for long-term planning if you want to stay around. Now obviously not everybody does, and I think the general life cycle of somebody is 9 months, but for those of you who are looking or thinking about planning for the future, then starting these things now will obviously help no end in the long run and give you a good basis to build upon. And training this now is easier than it's ever been, and without sounding like a bitter old vet here, in the past you used to have training skills and you used to have advanced training skills, and in order to get your maximum training efficiency you would have to get them to the basic ones to level 5 and pretty much the advanced ones to level 4. Each attribute, 5 attributes, 5 weeks plus, so you were training for about a month and a half before you even had maximum attributes. So training in the past used to take obviously quite a lot longer, and it was a lot more painful because you'd have all this time spent on learning skills, which thankfully CCP removed in the end. But one of the points I'm trying to make there is, for my main character I never really looked at the game long term, and the level 3 or the training multiplier 3 for the advanced learning skills I think had a payoff time. If you were to train it from level 4 to 5, it would take 4.5 years for you to recoup the amount of training points that you put into it. So basically for it to pay off you would have to train for 4.5 years before it started to become worthwhile, and I never did that on my main because I never expected to be around that long. And obviously in hindsight 16.5 years later, that cost me some efficiency initially early on due to lack of foresight or planning on my part. So now that them skills are removed, obviously getting a character to a decent amount of skill points that is useful and viable is much easier and much quicker. So I think I've droned on long enough there. I think we'll wrap the video up. If you have any questions etc., then please feel free to ask. Post a comment, catch me in game in StrangeNet channel. So I say there's a good number of us now hanging out. Feel free to drop in, say hi, hang out, ask questions, etc. If you've made it this far and you haven't subscribed, then do please think about it. It's very much appreciated. And with that, thanks for listening.